not only is our guest a WWE Hall of Famer, he's a former Intercontinental Champion, but he may also be regarded as one of the most sinister villains to ever step foot in the squared circle and be a vital part of some of the greatest moments in pro wrestling history. You can call him the original Rock, you can call him the very first King of the Ring, or you could even call him the Beach Bum. But to us, he truly is magnificent, and he is the magnificent Don Murraco. Thank you so much for joining the two-man power trip of wrestling.
Oh, thanks for having me. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Totally will not. But, yeah, like I said, we're thrilled to have you. It's such an honor. And I guess, you know, the easiest question to ask you is how you been and what have you been up to?
Pretty good. Getting old, working on aging. I just in the process of retiring from 24 years of longshoreman.
All right.
So, yeah, I've been back here in Hawaii, working down on the docks for the last 24 years, and I'm diving deep into retirement, real deep.
Very nice. Now, did you become a longshoreman after you retired from the ring, or did you wait a little bit before you got back into?
A little bit. It was a little bit. I kind of, did some promotion and did some other stuff. Did a little bit of independent, little ECW, but no, But then I just decided to go, It came up, and it was a new profession, and interested me. And beginning the work was real hard. And, I ended up a clerk, so I got to. But it was an interesting life.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, you mentioned ECW. One of the things, I think it's almost a trivia question at this point, because it was so hard to see that ECW footage for such a long time, that you're a former ECW champion. And that early part of ECW is funny because there was a lot of guys that had very familiar faces to the wrestling business that were coming in and out of ECW. And it's kind of like a who's who of the, some of the more veteran stars. But what are some of your memories of that time in ECW? Do you look back fondly on that right before you retired?
It was a trip. I got them a few of the guys that a lot of professional independent guys. Kalua and a lot of Tom Brandy and a lot of those guys. They worked a lot of the independent circuits, so I got to meet a bunch of those guys, and it was a different, it was different from being spoiled. The WWF was there, and there was a little hustle going on to it and stuff. It was a challenge. I just spent a lot of time into it, and I wasn't into it. But yeah, and then later on, see a lot of these guys come through and become stars after a while.
Yeah, totally. And that crowd, that Philadelphia crowd, was so passionate and helped build that original ECW to crazy heights in terms of the cult popularity. And like I said, a lot of familiar faces there. And of course, one guy who you were linked to for a large part of your career is also in ECW at the time. Actually, played both a heel and a baby face, and that's the Superfly Jimmy Snuka. What were your memories of getting back in with him around ECW? Did you guys recreate some of that old magic?
I don't believe so. I don't know. You can check the records. I don't know if we did much together. We might have done a tag. I wasn't there really that long. I was living in Hawaii. Coming in, I came in to drop the belt to somebody or something I came in to pass the belt to Tito, I think. I came and I was just coming in. I just came in and did a couple shows here and there at the time for him. So I was just there for a fast 3 months.
Yeah, and you mentioned losing to Tito. He also had a pretty good run in that original ECW. But let's if we could just go back to Jimmy Snuka for a minute. Obviously, we all know the infamous moment. It helped spawn careers for the next generation of superstars. It's one of the most visually impressive moments in pro wrestling history, like I mentioned at the top of the show. But what do you remember about looking up at the Superfly as he's about to come down and thinking, did you have a feeling at that point that there could be a change in the landscape of pro wrestling after he jumped off that cage?
We were going through a whole change at the time. It wasn't Hulk Hogan yet, but it could have been. The business was doing so well and had been doing so well. It kind of followed. It picked up. I told Bruno, I was talking to Bruno one time. I said, he said, I say, I got it from Rocca. Rocca got it from him. We got it from Bruno and Backlund and those guys. It just passed down. So the business in the Northeast there was always fabulous. And then with the growth of television and the incorporation of TV and cable TV and yada yada yada, it was just like a natural progression, I think.
Oh, yeah, totally. And some of those matches that you had, in the Northeast and specifically at Madison Square Garden, I mean, it's a raucous crowd. You were such an awesome bad guy, villain, heel, whatever you want to call it. Your promos literally talk people in the building, maybe more to try to get to you than to actually watch the match because you were so good with how you presented your promos. Did you like working that Northeastern crowd, maybe more than some others because they were easy to agitate?
You loved it, yeah. Well, I had, I don't know, I thought I was pretty hot I watch every once in a while, catch old tapes of myself, and I go through on my iPhone and stuff and catch some stuff, and I see, I watch, the first 5, 8, 10 minutes. All I do is get the shit kicked out of me, but the people are popping the whole time. They never seem to come down or to get enough of it, So it's just, it was an entertaining time to have the people, everything so hot and everything around you going on so hot, Because I would just, I look at the matches now and, it's just one comeback after another. But they were, they're loving it and they're having a good time. And Beach Bum was going wild, so. It was it's great. You literally could close your eyes if you're a longtime fan like John and I. You could just see, you could see in the backstage area with either, with Vince or with Gorilla Monsoon, and just amping up the crowd, the television crowd, talking about a Jimmy Snuka or a Pedro Morales or Ricky Steamboat. But if I can, just with Jimmy Snuka, you guys, like I said, are so tied to one another. Did you find it easy to go after a guy like Snuka with some of the things you said in your promos? Like, was it something that was so, did you guys have a good relationship where you could kind of go that little extra limit and kind of jab him a little bit just to get him more riled up? Because there's the infamous him throwing the chairs, Murraco, and was that something you guys kind of had a good rapport with? Probably. We broke in about the same time. I was back here wrestling in Hawaii. I had wrestled in Vancouver and Portland at the same time, and then LA for a couple months. And then I came back out here in Hawaii. I hadn't been in the business maybe a year, maybe not quite. And Frankie Lane was breaking Jimmy in. So we, started the book, and that's where we, became familiar with one another. And then Portland and Minnesota and, on down the road, yeah. So probably, it was easier. And, we communicated. Polynesians, we worked for each other and wanted to see each other, both get over.
Now, obviously.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, obviously, Jimmy Snuka has been in the news a little bit, not for, some of the finer things, in his career. Unfortunately, he published a book and said things in the book that kind of caught the eye, of people with with the old court case that had always been kind of out there. But was that ever something that, and I don't mean to damper it a little bit. Was that something that, was known about at the time, or was that kind of just everybody had their own business going in their own directions?
I don't know. I was right there around it the whole time. It was the week after we just shot the thing where he threw all my clothes off, and I hit him with the microphone and stuff. So I had the same night. It was a lot of coincidence. Eddie Gilbert, remember Eddie Gilbert?
Oh yeah.
The young one, Tommy Gilbert's son.
Mm-hmm.
He had run his brand new Lincoln Town Car up the back end of a semi truck and got drugged down the freeway. He called me in the middle of the night, and that's how I ended up, crossing over with all the state troopers and everything else, and how I got involved. But that's it was quite I could see my whole future going down the drain there for a while.
Yeah, it's looking back, I mean, that's those rides you think about, anything could happen when you're going between towns, and some of those rides seem to maybe be a little bit longer than others. But do you remember those trips to Allentown? Maybe sometimes you never knew it was on the other side of that road.
Yeah, that was. Those were. I guess those are the good old days. Back in Allentown and Hamburg, and back to either Connecticut or Jersey, wherever you lived at the time. Those places were, that was good old time wrestling.
Now, with obviously, Jimmy Snuka is in the news a lot and the issues, but what was your relationship like with him, like today? Do you still have any contact with him? Obviously, you guys awesome feud and you guys were rivals, but were you guys friends outside the business, and do you, have any contact today?
Yeah, I talked to him I was talking to him on the phone till he started having his medical issues, and I haven't spoken to him for a while. His wife wanted me to see him next week or thereabouts when I'm up in New Jersey. I'm doing also the All-Stars that show up in Jersey, and then I was trying to, she wanted me to say hello to him, to, kind of perk up his spirits, hopefully.
Yes, definitely. His name has been thrown around there a lot lately, and a lot of crazy stuff. But, obviously that was a great feud for you. But speaking of great feuds, if I could tune a little bit and change the subject, was a great wrestler that you had, many IC title, the Intercontinental title once you won it from the WWF, and many feuds there with Pedro Morales. What was it like working with Pedro and winning the IC title?
It was good. I didn't have too many guys. I didn't have anybody that didn't enjoy working with, and everything was right, with the crowd and, all the reaction and everything was right there. So it was all good. It wasn't, we didn't have to work real hard to get the people up, because the people were pretty well jazzed, So pretty much, a lot of what we did just, got over, and which, made for a good and easy match, because there was just that much momentum and stuff in the territory at the time. So, it's a lot of things are relative, how the territory is, and the way that people take the different type of workers and the different type of work the guy does. Pedro was a solid, real solid, rugged guy, and had a mass appeal. So he was, I've always enjoyed working. I heard he's fallen on health problems too. So I wish him the best, and his family. But yeah, he was always cool with Pete. In fact, I've worked with him several places. I think in in San Francisco territory, a couple other places where he was around. Florida, maybe. I don't remember when I was a healer, maybe. I think once when I turned heel after that. I don't know. But I've been, with Pedro several times.
Your feud with him was great, and it led to you winning the IC title twice, and you had two very, very long reigns, especially today, speaking of very long reigns, once was a year, once was almost a year. With the IC title back then, it was a lot more prominent than it is now. Did you feel that, you basically, Vince McMahon at that point, Vince the Senior, was giving you the ball and you were becoming one of the faces of the WWF?
Yeah, kind of. I kind of felt that, more than just like a title per se, that it had some meaning and some backing, some momentum behind it, as far as the Intercontinental Champion and stuff, and that Pat Patterson, Slaughter, and those guys had done a good job building it up. So just continuing in that vein, stuff was everything was pretty laid out, pretty well for you. Your fault, if you fumbled, it was your fault, because the crowds and the people were certainly receptive to whatever was going down, if it was going down good.
Such a hot territory. New York was, booming. The WWF was doing great. And, Vince Sr. obviously was doing great, but obviously when Vince Jr. took it over, it was a whole different ballgame. What's the difference between working for Vince Sr. and working for Vince Jr.?
Well, man, it's apples and oranges at two different times. Vince Sr. was an old promoter in the old days, and he had his area and his promotion, and his territory. It was everybody, Atlanta, Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, everybody, Crockett's, Watts, California, you know what I mean, Vern Gagne, AWA. So Vince Senior was, even graceful, a gentleman, and then not that Vince Senior is, the Junior isn't, but honorable type, classy kind of guy, And then Vince got in, new generation with network, with cable TV and the network, and then pay-per-view and marketing and commercials and cartoons and this and that, So Vince was Senior was your traditional promoter in an area that was just was outstanding area, and it was hard for him not to be a real classy guy. And then Vince Jr. is just the wild man he seems, pushing and taking a chance, and he was part of that Evel Knievel dive over the Grand Canyon and stuff like that. So different type of guys,
And
but
one
it was
guy.
interesting. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Oh, so sorry to cut you off. Yes, definitely.
No, just the transition, from that. I was lucky to be part of the transition from the Vince McMahon Sr., Eddie Graham, Crockett was still going wild at the time, but all that Jim Barnett era, Vince McMahon, not Vince McMahon, Vern Gagne, all that type of transition into the junior, Vince McMahon Jr. is a high wire act. That was it was entertaining and enlightening, and now to watch him, is still entertaining.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And one of the main players before Vince McMahon Jr. was Hulk Hogan, and they put the WWF title on him in Hulkamania, and he soared to new heights. And one of his greatest feuds was with you for the WWF title. Did you ever think that maybe you were going to get the WWF title, or were you kind of happy just being involved in the feud?
There was a chance I could have got it, but by that time they'd gone a whole different direction. There was a possibility. I suppose my name was in the hat, but I doubt if it was ever a serious consideration. Although I did carry, maybe earlier when I was doing the Magnificent Murraco and that type of thing would have been. But it was. I carried enough heat with that Intercontinental Championship where they didn't need me as a world champion to draw money, because the world champion was doing his bit with the other heels that would be in at the time. Whoever, Mass Superstar or Big John Studd or whoever happened to be the second, like the 1 and 1A heels that they had going. 1A, 1B, all the different heels and stuff that they had going in the WWF at the time.
And at that time,
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, at that time, they kind of went a little bit, obviously more sports entertainment, and they had Fuji General and, of course, Fuji Vice when they teamed up with Mr. Fuji, which was awesome. Do you love that pairing? Because, watching it on TV and watching it on tape and stuff, it was so much fun. It was so entertaining with you and Mr. Fuji.
Well, I go back way back with Fuji, even before Snuka. I knew him. He was, he'd be down, I knew him from Dean Higuchi, who became Dean Ho, who was Tony Gurria's tag partner at one time. Mm-hmm. And he had a gym in Waikiki where I worked out, and that's how far back I go with Fuji. So yeah, it was an easy pairing, And Fuji's insane anyway, so it was a trip to be around.
Did you like doing those? Did you like doing those sketches, the Fuji Vice and stuff? Did you find that fun and entertaining for yourself? Oh
God, they were so bad. I don't know. It's hard really liking that. It was okay. It all got done. It was kind of fun, I guess. You had some grandeur to it. I remember they flew me back from Hawaii early. I was on vacation. They picked us up, my wife and 2 kids in a limo, and drove us to. They'd rented a bar. I suppose it had been closed that night, but a nightclub atmosphere. We did some little scene, about 10 minutes, and that was it. And then that was kind of where they were running at the time. It was, and then the Fuji Hollywood. There was walking up to these gates, these Hollywood gates, and the guards running us off and stuff. And it was some bizarre stuff. That comedy bit that made me do was insane. The idea always being the worse the better, and I think we always lived up to that, because it was pretty. Most of the stuff was pretty hard. They gave you the script right there, and everything was hot. You didn't know anything, or they weren't going for any, acting skills or anything like that. They just wanted to deliver it, so the more outlandish, the better.
And the funny part is the parallel between the two, that actually you guys were playing these devious bad guys and coming off as these cheeseball, sketches that, you guys are fumbling over lines. The acting is, somewhat subpar, but it was pulling off both sides of the spectrum. Now, did you like showing the lighter side of the Magnificent Murraco at that point? Because as we said earlier, the promos were so intense, but this was the lighter side of the Magnificent one.
Oh yeah, it was all good at that time. Everything was good for everything. Everything was a new experience. It was all. all a lot of fun at the time. Crazy.
I'm sure. And, and actually, I want to mention really quick, and I hate to say this, but unfortunately the passing of Roddy Piper earlier this year, and, we've known from stories that have been told, they're like mythical, legendary stories at this point about Roddy Piper and his ways back in the day, and, you were one of his riding buddies, one of the guys that he loved to talk about. What are your memories of the hot rod, traveling with the hot rod, and is there anything that specifically stands out to you when you think of him in retrospect?
Oh, yeah, I was a shock. But there was I met him in, I want to say 76, but I think he came down, was in L.A. before because my parents, I was down around Santa Monica. I don't know if I was working San Francisco or coming down when he was doing the Chavo feud. Him and Chavo, they were doing good business in L.A., comparatively. It was right around then. But actually before that, when he came riding in some one of those old beat-up cars in a pit bull into Texas. And, that was like 74.
Wow.
We'll go back quite a ways.
Yeah, it's some of those stories, like I said, they're, the things that, like, you almost sit there and you go, wow. People getting away with stuff like that is that's amazing to hear, but it's so entertaining. And, it's funny, you talk about meeting him back in 74, in California. You think about the territory system and how, that really absolved once the WWF went national. Did you love the territory system? Did you like going from one place to another, working new crowds? Or did you think it was something that was going to go away at some point?
Oh, no. Well, I was barefoot and stupid. Just happened to get a job in those days, to be working, and learning and working my way up, and there was, there were older guys that were over and stuff at the time, so it was just, like barefoot and pregnant, just whatever. Then I had a different, because I went to the Minneapolis. I had an AWA run real early in my career, which helped kind of elevate me. Lord Blears sent me on that with Vergania, so it elevated me a little bit where I had a little bit of a little bit of leverage with the offices before they became out of sight.
Do you have a personally favorite territory that you went through?
Some for different reasons, Florida, just for the fun and the craziness, When I was in San Francisco for work, Roy Shires, I used to live in Santa Cruz, surf all the time. So that was a great life. Yeah. Surfing and I was working too. We literally set the world on fire with paydays, but it was getting by. There'd be a cow palace in there, occasionally to make things go all right. But I'm going to the kindergarten here now with my grandson. I left too early too. But yeah, Florida was great. Atlanta was fun. All those territories were, wild and woolly back then. And when I went to Minnesota, I was probably too young to appreciate, just left Hawaii and cold and the snow and all the freezing and stuff up there was. I didn't like it, although I was making tons of money, and I wasn't grateful, I guess, because I just hated living there. But I guess I'm probably too, little immaturity and youth had a big part to do with that. As if I'd, been worried about the money, and there's I would have hung in there.
Now, speaking about making money and stuff, when you were in the WWF and they turned you face, and they put the tie dye on you, they put you on Superstar Billy Graham as your manager, and they made you The Rock. Did you like the face turn? Was that financially good for you? And did you actually like being a face rather than being the classic magnificent Murraco heel?
I didn't care for being a baby face. No, not after all those. It was changed. I'd slowed down by then anyway. So I wasn't too thrilled with it. But aside from that, it was okay. And by that time, we were pretty much on a salary more or less anyway. They kept you in a pay range at that time. So, and I was getting towards the end of my wrestling.
With that period, did you really rather stay the heel, and didn't want to really turn face, and did that kind of like lead to the departure?
No, I just had a couple run-ins with guys, and
I'm not here.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
We're gonna go home with her?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, hello?
Yep.
Okay. All good. My daughter's picking up my grandson. So.
No problem.
I'm good. Okay, I'm good to go now.
All right.
Yeah, no problem. I was going to say, do you feel like the locker room changed? Right before you left the WWF, did you feel like there was a big change and a big shift, and that was maybe some issues that you were having backstage?
Oh, maybe a little bit, but wasn't bad. I hadn't noticed it. No, by that time it's still pretty pretty normal. It was going through. It started to change. That's when Dynamite got his teeth knocked out, and a few things are going down. So I suppose there had been a turn, in the agents were kind of stepping up and taking the heat for the office stuff. The office wanted to do things, but would rather do it through the agent, than get the heat on themselves. Get rid of one of the guys or something like that. But we all had everybody got an opportunity. Everybody, I read that I kind of follow once in a while that Dan Spivey and Billy Jack Haynes feud.
Oh yeah,
that's going on, and everybody made money, and everybody chose to go their own way. Once the matches were over, there was nothing, nobody holding a gun to your head to do anything, or, anything coming down. Kind of think, I think I'm going to see Daddy next week in New Jersey at that Hall of Fame and signing, or whatever they call it.
Well, we recently had on Dan Spivey. Now, obviously, we got his take on it, and obviously it's way different than the Billy Jack Haynes take on it. What's your take on it? Whose side are you more for?
I would have to be more for the personal responsibility. Although we were getting run really hard, that's I don't know. You have to take. I guess I would follow Spivey, where you have to take responsibility for yourself. I just saw that tape of Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page and all those four of them, and the big, I think it was a girl from Heart doing it, the Stairway to Heaven. Remember how, they're still surviving. Led Zeppelin's still going. A lot of the wrestlers should be able to. Some guys, some guys stuck in. But I think Daddy Spivey is, I think you're kind of responsible for yourself when it comes to addiction and take care of your bread and stuff. Because we're all afforded the opportunity, and then make money, and then when you lose it, I guess when you're knocked off your high, you're a high horse. You probably want to blame somebody else. When somebody's making more money than you, and you're envious or however you want to put it. So yeah, that would probably that may be a deterrent.
Yeah, I feel like perhaps I'm more for Spivey for sure, because I think that Billy J. King worked, many other different territories besides just the WWF, and he's blaming Vince for all his problems. But speaking of working, many territories, you actually, had the privilege of working, basically everywhere. Canada, obviously USA, everywhere. Obviously big time in Hawaii. But you wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling. You wrestled in Japan for the War promotion as well. What was it like working in Japan? Did you sense it's a lot different than working in the States?
The work is the same. The crowd's different. The first time I went there was real weird, and then you kind of get used to it. There's the lack of no reaction from the crowd and stuff like that. And the occasional the clap, and the muffled sound, and then the guys like Abdullah and those guys coming in. But it's kind of good. It's got to be great now with all the the DVDs and cables and stuff. Back in those days, it was just Japanese. Everything was Japanese, and with all the cable and DVDs and all that stuff. Now you could just you could spend 6 weeks there and stand on your head. But the matches are good. They're good. I used to work along with Jumbo Tsuruta and Fujinami. When I was young, when I was first started going there. So I was one of those baby faces that, So I worked with Fujinami and with Inoki, and then worked a lot with Jumbo too. And most of the time filling matches, 30-minute Broadways or the 45-minute Broadways. The rest of them, so they could get all their stuff in. So it wasn't bad. Every once in a while I'd get the Abdullah or Tiger Jeet Singh or one of those guys partner. 15 minutes of fire extinguishers and whatever else that goes on. Wild, crazy shit. They're a good time.
Yeah, that's great. You can have that kind of different matches, because obviously Abdullah Butcher is a lot different than wrestling a legend, like Jumbo Tsuruta. And speaking of, going the complete opposite spectrum and having matches, there's a match I haven't been able to find that I don't know if there's footage of, but I really want to be able to find it. It's you from Florida against Jack Briscoe. Do you remember that match? Because I'm reading all this stuff online. I desperately want to see it, because I heard it's a great match to kind of put you on the map as a big star.
I remember we had a Indian strap match at the Bayfront one time, and probably a couple other matches, and I think in Charlotte we worked a few times. When we were both when I turned heel in Charlotte for that summer I was there. But if Ed Sully would be on, or the Briscoes have those tapes, so that them would be the ones to. I like to see the one with me and Koloff in the cage. That one was pretty extraordinary, I think. When I was a babyface, had long hair and curls and a mustache. Yeah, and Koloff was like a machine. Just boom, 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 boom. And we built up to a cage match in Bayfront in St. Petersburg, which was a pretty cool match. I think he was on the card. Dusty and Terry Funk were on the card for the. Terry just got the NWA. He just got the NWA title, and Dusty and Terry were on top for the title. That's the other guy I spent a lot of time with too, Dusty.
Oh yeah.
In the floor, yeah. He used to call me his favorite heel, but I think he told that to all the boys. They were his favorite. As long as he was going over, they were all his favorite heels.
You worked him a lot in the AWA too, Florida and the AWA, right?
Yeah, AWA too, yeah. Him and Murdoch and breaking in Ric Flair. Ric Flair out at Gagne's farm. Him, the Sheik, Ken Patera, Bobby Bruggers, Brunzell, and Greg Gagne. That was their class. And I go to after Robinson and Joe Scarpello and Danny Hodge and those guys would go up and beat the shit out of them. Try and beat the shit out of them. And then they'd see me and just start glowing. I'd come in and do regular wrestling high spots and, drop down, get it again, headlock, Well, they were just elated to be doing some real professional wrestling and not getting the shit kicked out of them for a change. But we worked hard though. But I was in that barn, Gary Gagne's barn, where Flair, Flair was there. He was about 310 pounds.
Whoa.
He's a big guy. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked to Jim Brunzell not too long ago about that camp, and he definitely remembers some of those training sessions. And do you think that today's athlete could kind of hold up to what went on in that barn? And I guess what happened in that barn, will it always stay in that barn?
I don't know. They're doing some pretty crazy stuff right now. I watch a lot of the new techniques and stuff, and it's to be able to do that's the kind of stuff we were doing back then. That high intensity, high aerobic, high performance, different types of training and stuff. And I see it in some of my daughter's tapes and stuff. These guys doing that stuff now. So yeah, I'm just, but now they have there's a better awareness. There's a better knowledge now. It's like, better not be 65 years old and trying any of that stuff, Be up for pounding or asking for pounding.
Well, actually, unfortunately, Sting suffered an injury at the show they had last night on kind of a tricky turnbuckle bump. And that's actually a great point because, the conditioning and the I guess the work that goes into, how a match is put on today versus how maybe, when somebody broke into the business, 20, 30 years ago is a lot different. Have you, checked out today's wrestling scene? And, is it something that you saw the business, evolving to with how it is today?
Some of the guys are pretty off the wall. And naturally start with Cactus Jack, Nick Foley. And, all the stuff he did. I still say he's the one that got The Rock over. When he, that's what got The Rock over. When he had himself handcuffed behind his back. I don't know how many times he hit him with the chair, but it's kind of legendary how many times The Rock whacked him with the chair.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That whole scene there, that was insane. The Rock couldn't swing like a pussy either. He had to swing for the fences. Like he was, it was a big time match, and he was hitting some big time shots. Yeah, some of that stuff is insane. But the guy Lonnie Main and a couple other guys used to take bumps like that. At no regard. I mean, look, he was doing that. He'd run and do that elbow off the apron onto the cement. He was doing that in the house shows in front of 25 people. So he just had no regard for his body. Basically, I think. It's just a matter of time. I think he just held together by screws. So a lot of, and then the kid with the ladders and stuff. That's pretty wild.
Yeah,
the boys are like that.
Yeah, exactly. And Cactus Jack, with that off the apron elbow, took a beating on his knees, took a beating on his back, and maybe took some years off his career. But then moved forward, with the ladders and the tables and things of that nature. Would the Magnificent Murraco have gone through a table had it meant, returning business the following month?
Oh, Jesus, we're talking 40 years ago, Probably, whatever, it seemed like at that time you do whatever it takes, and, it's easy to be brave. You're 40 years removed for something like that and say, hell yeah. But, I don't know. That one bump off the top of the cage, I would probably have that a lot more set up, a lot more room for error than what he had. That's for sure. But everything else, but I suppose, you say, it's easy to sit back now and go, oh, yeah, sure, I would have done that. Money, but I don't know.
It's funny looking back at the, as you start to wind it down here, just looking back, that Snuka bump off the top of the cage, everyone gives him praise, but you're the one that, had to take him, 250-pound man falling down on top of you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. That was, when he caught me just with his knee in the corner of my hip, and kind of, he jolted me there. But aside from that, everything else was, naturally was like, 12, 15 feet in the air. So, couldn't have been that soft. So I caught him as much as I could. And then, this is history.
We actually, we had on an executive from Coliseum Video early in our run, and he mentioned an interview he did with you where basically you just said the same exact thing that he said, and he really puts you above the Snuka leap as being, if it wasn't for Don Murraco, there wasn't going to be a Snuka leap because he did have to land somewhere, and there was no better base than that big Don Murraco laying on that canvas.
Hip, hip, hooray. It is what like old Red Bastien used to say.
And we're
talking. What it is. Sorry?
Oh, I was going to say we were talking, about that historic moment and that cage match and Jimmy Snuka, and you can look back at all these other awesome matches that you had, against Hogan or Pedro Morales or Jack Briscoe, like you mentioned, or Jumbo Saruta. But do you have a favorite match or matches that you had in your career?
Some of the big ones stick out in your mind. I don't know if they're the favorite matches. I remember one time in the Boston Garden they popped so loud it was incredible with Hogan and Snuka. Me and Bob Orton. We did it where Hogan came up and Snuka had been down and Snuka came up and the people just kept going, getting higher and higher. But there's a few others. There's a lot of others, but there was a lot of nights on the road, and a lot of hopefully most of the performances were up to par. I'm sure there were more than a handful that missed. Didn't get a bit great reaction, but most of them were up to. I remember a few. I'd have to go sit around and think as stuff comes into my mind now. But offhand, I don't remember a lot of the Steamboat stuff and back different days in Florida, and, San Francisco. A lot of hot matches there. And Florida, Georgia, Bill the Butcher, those kind of things. Houston, Texas with Mad Dog Vachon and stuff like that, just those bloodbaths and wars and, all that kind of stuff. New Zealand with King Curtis and Mark Lewin and stuff. Australia, New Zealand. We had pretty good business going down there for a while. And that was pretty wild territory, too.
Yes, definitely. Now, we were talking about great matches and stuff. I think we kind of mentioned in passing before, but I actually wanted to go back to it. What about Ricky Steamboat? Did you enjoy working with Ricky Steamboat? Because I just remember those being classic matches.
Yeah. All those guys, Steamboat, Tito, Steamboat especially, but Tito too. Tito was more leaving at that time, but Steamboat was or changing by that time. Steamboat would contribute a lot and go overboard to get matches over and stuff. As Tito, as everybody did, But I remember Ricky was really meticulous. He was, a little bit smaller. So he had some other stuff, and he did a lot of nice things, a lot of nice moves that we were able to work into a real violent type match, yet still have a lot of classical wrestling moves and stuff like that. And so Steamboat was a good one. It was a real good flow.
Who would you consider your favorite opponent? Would it be a Steamboat, or maybe was it a Jimmy Snuka, a guy that you had such a big-time, long history with?
No, God, I don't know. Who made the most money that night? I had a Tiger. And the Hulkster used to come down. My skin used to pop too for I had the Tiger. I said this before, but I don't know. I realized recently with all the racial things and the stuff he got caught with. But then, but previous to that, with the Dave Meltzer and the wrestling underground media as it is, and Hulk and the Ultimate Warrior and a couple of those guys were such horrible workers and such boring performers. Yet they were doing fabulous business, it was just, and sometimes it's a little unjust that they get criticized for. You may not like somebody's style or somebody may not everybody works like Ray Stevens and Dory Funk Jr. I think probably the two greatest. Just natural. But not everybody works like that. Look at Bruno, all the success Bruno had, and his style to a lot of workers, isn't the greatest. Yet, look at the results, and I think then you hold Hogan to those standards, and I don't know. Seems like with the underground going around, Hogan comes out a bum. But I was there in those times, and the times everybody was fat. Everybody, after I left, he kept going. He kept going, So it was good times.
Yeah, it's crazy, good times, because, and I think it's the great Bobby Heenan said it. He's like, that these guys consider Hogan not a good worker, yet he's filling the seats, so he must be the best worker that he's ever seen.
Yeah, Well, maybe the Rock's gone by that as far as taking it to the next level, but in his time, and his and everybody dumps on him. Not everybody, but he seems like to be a favorite target to be dumped on. And I being removed from Hawaii, and I was never part of his clique, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But I was never part of his clique with the guys used to follow him around and kiss his ass and stuff, and for work and for bookings and for places on the card and stuff. But he was always seemed to be one of the guys, kind of. But he wasn't, because he was the Hulk, and he was on his own trip. He was doing he had the TV and the NBC and the movies and everybody coming after him. Well, he was different. He was different than the rest of us, whether you want to admit it or not.
Definitely true. Did you ever detect any racism from Hogan? Because obviously, all this stuff has come out, but did you ever see anything? And a lot of people are coming to his defense.
I never, no. I never saw him as a racist, or bigot, or anything. He got caught. It was stupid. He was, for a guy who spends that much time talking on, publicly like we're talking now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
For a person who spends that much time being taped, even it would be unthinkable if I would come up with it. And I never do interviews and stuff. But for a person who spends that much time, it was pretty dumb. It was pretty insensitive to go. I don't know if it was secretly being taped or what the story is or what the thing, but still, with all that political correctness and stuff going down now, you kind of got to, watch your P's and Q's all the time.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you totally have to. Oh, my God, yes. Totally. Now, Mr. Murraco, this has been absolutely, an honor. And, you said you don't do many interviews, so with that, we are eternally grateful. But before we let you go, one thing we like to end the interview with somebody of your stature is when you look back on your career and you look back at all the amazing things that you've done, what would you say the magnificent Murraco's legacy is on the professional wrestling industry?
Worked hard, produced, hard worker, and just hard worker like a lot of other guys. Had a lot of friends, a lot of good friends. Roddy Piper, a lot of the guys that have just passed recently. Dusty, love affair with him. In and out, good friend, bad friend, good friend, bad friend. Yeah, we were close. Went to Japan first time with him. Roddy was always close with him. Other guys, I heard Tony Charles just passed, and other guys, and Other guys have gone, and a lot of guys living now. But just had a lot of friends and had a good time. Always had Dino Bravo. Always had a good time wrestling, and enjoyed most of the people I was around all the time. So yeah, it was a great life. And then I was lucky enough to move on to the docks, and now I'm retired.
And we really appreciate you coming on. But I just want to ask you, do you remember your line in the Land of a Thousand Dances video, the iconic rock and wrestling video? Do you remember Murraco's line?
I remember. Do you know how to? Supposed to be. Do you know how to pony? But I don't know how you massacre. Yeah, I don't remember my line. No.
Well, if you would like some help, it's like Boney Maroney.
Okay, yeah. I was too taken with Fuji's line. I was always too taken with what Fuji was doing. Yeah, okay. I thought they might have changed changed the words around. Okay, like Boney Maroney. I'll go for that.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.